I scare you? Sorry for having gone ghost. We need to take a little break. Exhaustion is scary. Okay, haha. Anyways, Halloween puns, etc., etc. There's gonna be a couple more. Come watch, learn about what's happening in your area, and stay in the know.
Welcome back and happy Halloween. I'm Megan from Tampa Bay Activist Network, and I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, and I'm Andy. Halloween can be scary, but do you know what's scarier? Not following Tampa Bay Activist Network. Uninformed populations are easy to control. Our algorithm is also tricky as hell. So give us a treat by liking and commenting on our videos.
Listen, we're a grassroots project, and we love what we do, but we could use your help. If you're interested in joining the writing and/or research team for 2023, send an email to our partners at Restorative Justice Coalition. Black, Indigenous, and people of color, especially with disabilities and/or queer or trans, are strongly encouraged to submit interest. No professional writing experience is required.
Just remember, this is a grassroots project, so it will be a labor of love. We always do our best to split labor up so we can maintain our day jobs and survive under the scariest of all, capitalism.
At Tampa Bay Activist Network, we report extensively on the budget. We even did an episode back in August when the mayor gave her budget presentation. Check that out if you missed it.
Our friends at the Tampa Bay Community Action Committee have been watching the city's budget pretty closely. We're grateful for their continued involvement.
Charlie Frago with the Tampa Bay Times reported back on September 21st that the city of Tampa has approved a nearly $2 billion budget.
And, as he has reported, 6 of the 7 city council members approved of the mayor's budget, with only council member Bill Carson voting no.
According to Frago, the affordable housing allotment is projected to go from the $26 million originally included to nearly $43 million if the City Council approves a $10 million fund increase in the community redevelopment areas, or CRAs, which Frago projects they almost certainly will approve.
Most prominently, the city employees received a 9.5% raise, which is accounted for in the budget. Councilmember Lynn Hertak is quoted by Frago as saying the 9.5% pay raise will likely keep City of Tampa employees in their homes.
Councilmember Carlson says the raise will allow the city to maintain its talent pool in the face of ongoing inflation.
According to WUSF Public Media, back in August, the mayor prepared $26 million to handle the ongoing housing crisis. Back on September 6, WUSF reports, the City Council has asked the administration to find more funds.
As you might recall, a large number of housing advocates, including members of Florida Rising, the DSA, Restorative Justice Coalition, and Tampa Tenant Union, among others, demanded more money in housing through phone calls, emails, and public comment.
And in addition, several community members met with city council members one-on-one to demand higher priority on housing. Miss Connie Burton had referred to the original housing allocation as an insult. WUSF reports.
You might recall that back in March, as a concession to the people who flooded the city council in February demanding rent control, the city began accepting applications for renters struggling to pay their increases through a program called the Rental and Move-In Assistance Program, or RMAP.
And the program closed with just under 1,000 applicants shortly after opening. WTSP reports, however, that the program is now going to be available for an additional 250 applicants. This was reported on October 5th.
Robin Lockett, regional organizer for Florida Rising, is quoted by WTSP as saying that the rent is not going to go down. Many agree that this program is yet another Band-Aid that ultimately stops some bleeding but doesn't solve the problem, and we agree.
What would solve the problem? You've heard us say it 1,000 times, but we're going to say it again. An investment in an unconditional, non-punitive, non-religious, housing-first program. Essentially, guaranteeing housing to all those who want it, even if they aren't sober, made past mistakes, and or can't or don't work.
WTSP reports that the Tampa Bay Community Action Committee is asking for more money to fund this iteration of the RMAP program.
On September 21st, the Tampa Bay Community Action Committee went on social media to express their thoughts on the final approved budget. According to their post, they believe housing was only prioritized on paper.
Tampa Bay CAC wants to see $50 million for rental assistance and money for housing now, not later, they say. Most notably, Tampa Bay CAC says the city still managed to put 36% of our budget into the police.
On October 5th, McKenna Schuler with WMNF reported that the Tampa City Council was scheduled to vote on continued funding for the Tampa Police Co-Responder Program, formerly known as Tampa Police Behavioral Health Unit.
According to WMNF, through the pandemic, the city saw an increase in public need for help with anxiety and depression. In the same article, they cite the Vera Institute as stating police officers are ill-equipped to handle these crises safely. They report that at least 101 people were killed after a police officer responded to a mental health crisis in the United States.
St. Petersburg, while not without its own critiques, created a crisis worker-led program called Community Assistance Life and Liaison, or CALL. It's a program in response to the demands of the people after the murder of George Floyd. Unlike the program in Tampa, however, WMNF reports that the CALL program is separate from the St. Petersburg Police Department.
Why do we oppose the Tampa Police Behavioral Health Unit? You've heard it before, but it's simple. Policing does not solve the problem. Many communities, especially Black, Indigenous, and/or trans communities, do not trust the police, and rightfully so.
Essentially, while imperfect itself, the St. Pete version removes the police from the situation in most cases. A social worker or other crisis responder goes to the scene without police, without guns, without handcuffs. This is somewhat similar to the Cahoots program in Eugene, Oregon, a non-police program that has operated since 1989 and only, according to themselves, had used police in 2% of all their calls.
In Tampa, since 2020, the people have largely demanded a program similar to Cahoots, a non-police connected, autonomous program. Our version would have been led by impacted communities and professionals in marginalized identities. As part of the People's Safety Coalition, we organized, met with city council members individually, and made public comment about our version of the program in 2020 and 2021.
Hundreds of people in the community, including 2 hours worth of public comment in the budget hearings in September 2022, echoed these sentiments. Every demographic in Tampa largely believed in our version of the program. We know because we did a community-based survey. We also know because we heard the public comments echo this sentiment in droves.
Despite all of this, in 2021, behind closed doors, the city introduced this co-response program. Instead of defunding the police and refunding the community, the city militarized mental health, as a community leader Bernice Loredan stated back in 2021.
WMNF reports that on October 5th, additional funding for this program was requested. One major change that came forward was the mental health clinicians would be hired directly by the Tampa Police Department rather than through one of the community mental health service providers.
T-Band's own Angel D'Angelo, also with Restorative Justice Coalition, is quoted by WMNF as stating that the Tampa residents overwhelmingly demanded a Cahoots-like program, which by their own reports saved their city about $8.5 million annually.
D'Angelo said that the co-response program, especially one that hires clinicians directly through TPD, is the complete opposite of what the people have been demanding. He goes on to say that what we need is a marginalized-led version of Cahoots so that crises can be solved with care and compassion rather than handcuffs and guns. We agree.
The motion in support for this version of the co-response program, first motioned by Councilmember Vieira and seconded by Councilmember Maniscalco, was unanimously approved according to the action summary on the city's website. According to the Tampa Bay Times, the Hillsborough County Commission quietly but quickly approved the $8.5 billion budget. The Tampa Bay Times reports that the budget was approved 6-0 with Commissioner Stacy White absent.
The commission reportedly approved 293 projects involving library, parks, fire services, solid waste and sewers, roads, and of course, jails. $275 million will be used for what is described by Tampa Bay Times as a water campus in the southern part of the county.
County Budget Director Kevin Brickley stated there are still more needs to focus on, including a shortage of 23 fire stations, transit backlog, and a need for more affordable housing, the Times reports.
You may have heard through national media that Governor Ron DeSantis spent a pretty penny on a horrific xenophobic stunt that involved moving people, often referred to as migrants, to so-called liberal cities.
The Washington Post reported that the governor used $12 million for this effort, moving dozens of people to Martha's Vineyard. WAPO reports that DeSantis used a loophole in the funds the state received from the American Rescue Plan, which was intended as a response to the pandemic.
That $12 million could have been used to help a number of small to medium-sized businesses struggling in this economy. But instead, it was used to further separate families and largely impacted members of the Latina immigrant community, as well as other immigrants of color.
Pretty disgusting, but right on brand for DeSantis. Hurricane Ian was a scary moment in time for so many of us, especially with a direct hit projected in Tampa initially. Luckily for us, it moved further south. Our hearts go out to those who were hit.
In response to the hurricane, the Restorative Justice Coalition, as they usually do, demanded that Sheriff Chad Cronister evacuate Hillsborough County's Orient Road Jail, which is located in Evacuation Zone A. Zone A was placed under mandatory evacuation due to the storm surge risk.
Although the sheriff did not respond to RJC's call to action, RJC got involved with a grassroots group known as the Campaign to Fight Toxic Prisons. They had deeper demands, including Hillsborough, but also other jails and prisons in the state.
Eventually, after Campaign to Fight Toxic Prisons coordinated a phone zap call to action, RJC was able to confirm that the Hillsborough County Orient Road Jail was evacuated, with those populating the jail moved to higher ground at Falkenberg Jail, which is not in an evacuation zone.
Why do we worry about jails and prisons during hurricanes? Because inmates are human beings, and they matter. Even if they've done the worst thing you can imagine, we have to believe in that, even when it's hard.
According to a 2018 article in Prison Legal News, hurricanes are indeed a significant threat to those incarcerated. Why? They are often built on poorly drained land and floodplains, among other reasons.
Reports have shown that impacted incarcerated people may be forced into horrible conditions after a storm. As Prison Legal News reports, this could result in a lack of adequate sanitation or impact the ability to receive adequate medical care, meals, or other important services.
This could be due to flooding and other water backup issues, as well as indefinite power outages, making the deplorable prison and jail conditions even more unbearable. Prison Legal News reports one of the most common complaints post a storm include the inability to get life-affirming medical treatment, such as insulin.
The Prison Journalism Project highlights some incarcerated people's response to the storm. We recommend you take the time to read first-person experiences of those incarcerated.
May Azad, a representative of the Campaign to Fight Toxic Prisons, is quoted in the Florida Phoenix as saying, "At every level of the carceral system, there is a lack of safety and evacuation protocols." We agree?
The Florida Department of Corrections issued a press release on October 5th stating that all facilities in the path of Ian are operational and have an appropriate supply of water and food. According to their statement, all evacuated inmates have returned to their normal institutions except Tamaka Work Camp and Bradenton Bridge for unspecified reasons.
Not under the supervision of the Florida DOC, Newsweek reports that Lee and Collier County officials claim no jail inmates in those counties sustained any injuries either. We hope that's true, but as Newsweek notes, Lee County's own emergency map shows Lee County Jail as an evacuation zone.
Quoted in this article, D'Angelo with the Restorative Justice Coalition says that the county officials decided to gamble with human lives by not evacuating those at-risk jails.
Lee County in general failed to sound the alarm to evacuate even their unincarcerated population, CNN stated in an October 4th article.
Lee County includes Sanibel Island and Fort Myers. CNN states that a New York Times report found Lee County's own internal emergency planning rules were violated by not declaring an evacuation order in time.
As CNN reports, Lee County wasn't evacuated until less than 24 hours before landfall. DeSantis, along with Lee County Commissioner Chair Cecile Pendergrass and Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marceno, defended their delayed evacuation order. Pendergrass specifically told CNN there was well enough notice.
According to ABC Action News, on September 25th, the National Hurricane Center projected a storm surge between 4 to 7 feet in Lee County's coast. They report that Lee's emergency management plan says that even a 10% chance of a 6-foot storm surge should prompt an evacuation of Zone A in Lee County.
However, it wasn't until September 27th, around 5 p.m., that an evacuation was called, despite a prediction of that 4 to 7 feet surge 2 days prior. ABC reports that at least 54 deaths happened in Lee County as a result of the storm.
FEMA reportedly also is defending the county's decision despite it going against the county's own emergency management plan. At Tampa Bay Activist Network, through our partnerships with the Restorative Justice Coalition and the now defunct People's Safety Coalition, we are happy to be supporters of the family of Andrew Joseph III and the Andrew Joseph Foundation.
We're super happy to announce that after 8.5 years, on September 22nd, Andrew Joseph Jr. and Deanna Joseph, Andrew Joseph III's parents, were awarded $15 million in damages caused by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office back in 2014. This was due to negligence that led to the tragic but preventable death of 14-year-old Andrew Joseph III.
Justin Garcia with Creative Loafing reported on the case extensively, and members of T-BAN and our partner organizations attended important demonstrations outside of the courtroom during the 2-week trial, which began on Monday, September 12th.
Unless otherwise noted, all information in this section is as reported by Justin Garcia via Creative Loafing. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office maintained that on February 7, 2014, several children were disorderly on Student Day at the fair. However, the Joseph family says that their son was not part of the conduct. Despite this, he was detained and then eventually removed by HCSO representatives.
And those representatives did not notify the parents of Andrew Joseph III of his removal, despite him having been only 14, thus a minor at the time of his removal. Tabitha Jones-Jolivet of BLM Los Angeles, who traveled to Tampa to bear witness, is quoted by Garcia as saying, "Hillsborough County sheriffs disregarded, devalued, and criminalized Andrew Joseph III."
Director of BLM Grassroots, Dr. Melina Abdullah, is quoted as saying, "They don't get to steal the lives of our children and not be held accountable." Also residing in California, Abdullah was one of the many activists to visit Tampa to bear witness. Other activists traveled from Michigan, Boston, California, and Alabama in support.
Members of the Restorative Justice Coalition, Dream Defenders, Tampa Bay Community Action Committee, Black Lives Matter, Restoration Polk, among others, joined the community in support both inside and outside the courtroom.
Several times during the trial, and prior to it, the HCSO tried to claim qualified immunity protected them from accountability, on top of blaming both Andrew Joseph III and his parents for his demise. On September 13th, Judge Mary Scriven reportedly told HCSO they can't just create facts.
We should also note that the 10-person jury included no black people and no one visibly of color, so we at T-BAN presume it was an all-white jury.
Alarmingly, on the 14th, retired HCSO Sergeant Todd Anthony testified that Florida law pertaining to the detention of children should be up to the interpretation of individual police officers.
According to later testimony, Corporal Mark Clark, who reported to Anthony, detained Andrew Joseph III despite no evidence of Joseph having committed any crime.
As reported, an attorney for the Joseph family cited Florida Statute 985-101, which says that a child detained should be released to the child's parent, guardian, legal custodian, or if the child's parent, guardian, or legal custodian is unavailable, unwilling, or unable to provide supervision for the child, to any responsible adult.
However, as testimony has shown, Joseph wasn't released to any family member or responsible adult. Instead, having been left without an adult, near dark, busy highway, he was 14, mind you, a child.
On the 15th, a former FBI agent and former police chief of Tallahassee Police Department testified that the HCSO violated Andrew Joseph III's constitutional rights by taking him into custody and then later ejecting him without evidence of a crime back in February 7th, 2014.
"You can't detain someone for running," the former chief said, citing that Andrew's Fourth Amendment rights were violated.
One of the most alarming pieces of testimony happened on September 16th. Only 12 years old at the time, Corey Thornton, who reportedly looked up to Andrew Joseph III as a brother, was present during the time of the ejection on that tragic evening.
Our hearts go out to Corey, who had to be re-traumatized, now at the age of 21, telling his story. According to his testimony, Andrew and Corey had asked for permission to re-enter the fair after their unjust ejection, so that they could safely get back to their appropriate pickup point, since the Orient Road location was far from where they had planned to be picked up.
Corey testified that they were threatened with arrest not only if they tried to re-enter, but also if they stayed where they were waiting. Reportedly, the officer then told them that the only thing separating the two young boys from their pickup point was the interstate.
Our interpretation at T-Ban of that statement is basically the sheriff's deputy instructed these young boys to cross the dangerous interstate. As reported by Creative Loafing, the boys did what the officer told them and crossed I-4, but found themselves blocked by a barbed wire fence.
Attempting to figure out what to do next, that is when Corey Thornton says Andrew Joseph III made a decision to cross I-4 back to where they had been left by the deputy. Sadly, that is also when he would be struck by a driver and killed. Just awful.
At T-Ban, we don't believe victims need to be perfect or even close to it to deserve their humanity or for their lives to matter. But as learned in the September 19th testimony, Andrew Joseph III was very much a golden child in all respects. Despite this, the HCSO still painted him as a criminal.
The testimony on this day from his parents and his younger sister Deja Joseph was a tearjerker. Mr. Joseph Jr. said that Andrew Joseph III was the kind of child that parents pray for, even going as far as protecting lizards around the house from harm.
Deja Joseph said her older brother was her protector and her everything. But HCSO decided to tell various media outlets that several kids were ejected for criminal behavior and made no effort to clarify that Andrew Joseph III himself had not been involved in any of the supposed criminal behavior.
Following the testimony on the 19th, HCSO presented their defense. There's no reason for us to report on it because honestly, they had nothing of value to say, as usual. But on September 22nd, the jury responded with $15 million in damages to the family, holding HCSO legally accountable for the death of Andrew Joseph III.
Mr. Andrew Joseph Jr. said the family finally got vindication. Mrs. Deanna Joseph reiterated that this was to be a blueprint for families facing similar losses. She went on to criticize the legal doctrine of qualified immunity.
The work doesn't end here. Although $15 million is a historic sum for cases of this nature in Florida, no amount of money can replace a black child whose life was stolen. The Joseph family, through the work of the Andrew Joseph Foundation and BLM Grassroots, will continue to challenge qualified immunity and racism within law enforcement departments. Find them on andrewjosephfoundation.com and get involved.
What else is happening in the area? On October 6, Creative Loafing reported $7 million approved for Hurricane Ian relief by Tampa City Council.
WUSF reported on September 16th that the City Council had rejected the PURE project research proposal. The PURE project is designed to repurpose wastewater and place it into our aquifer and drinking supply.
The Sierra Club opposes the PURE project due to the potential harm to human and wildlife, WUSF reports. Councilmember Lynn Hertog is quoted as stating she does not anticipate any further approvals for the PURE project.
ABC Action News reports extra measures approved by the Tampa City Council and Mayor Jane Castor should help protect cemeteries from further displacement. As you may recall, several black cemeteries have been found around Tampa to have been destroyed by the city's development. So disrespectful.
The Florida Indigenous Alliance and American Indian Movement Central Florida have yet another demonstration at the site of the horrific Christopher Columbus statue at 300 Bayshore Boulevard on October 15th. According to Florida's Indigenous Alliance's Instagram, the groups have been asking the city of Tampa to remove this statue since 1991.
Under Mayor Curtis Hickson, the Rotary Club of Ybor sponsored this statue on October 12, 1953. The statue was commissioned by the club for $5,000. We stand in firm solidarity for the removal of this statue, which serves as a monument to genocide and pillaging of indigenous people.
Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister endorses the All for Transportation referendum coming to us, the voters, on the November ballot, according to Florida Politics.
The sheriff's endorsement comes with the promise that reducing traffic, as he believes the surtax will do, will increase the response time of first responders. He also states that the funding will provide for infrastructure that will make all of us safer.
Joining the sheriff, Florida Politics tells us that Tim Pearson, president of the Hillsborough County Firefighters Union, also supports this surtax. They join La Gaceta and the Tampa Bay Times in endorsing the tax reportedly designed to improve our transportation infrastructure.
An obvious topic for anyone that has lived in Hillsborough County for more than 5 minutes. The transportation tax has been a divisive topic both in political bodies and among community leaders. and organizers since its resurrection this year.
An effort to replace a 2018 tax approved by the voters but then struck down by a Florida court, the 2022 version of the tax hasn't quite won the hearts of everyone in the community. This coming from word of mouth told to members of Tampa Bay Activist Network in the community, as well as social media posts.
On October 10th, we learned through reporting by the Tampa Bay Times that a judge voided the transit tax ballot question. The reason provided by the Times was because the judge ruled the ballot question language to be misleading. There is talk the county commission may appeal this decision. What do you think? Was the judge right? Tell us in the comments.
Mitch Perry reports in the Florida Phoenix that suspended Hillsborough County State Attorney Andrew Warren is set for a federal trial regarding this suspension on November 29th.
Andrew Warren, the twice-elected state attorney of Hillsborough County, was removed by Governor DeSantis on August 4th. According to the governor's own statement, he stated that Warren was suspended because of Warren's alleged neglect of duty. The governor cited concerns that Warren was picking and choosing what laws to enforce.
Various reports state that Warren was suspended because he made statements that he would not prosecute abortion providers or seekers, and likewise would not prosecute gender care providers or seekers. Both very important human rights to uphold, but the governor did not agree, of course.
We will keep our eye out to see how the federal court responds to this terrifying case, which will occur after this midterm election. Until next time, I'm Andy. Don't forget to comment and like.
And I'm Megan. Until next time, and be safe this holiday season.